let's talk about the other Frenchman that the Spurs took and got at number 44 that, like I said, Brian Wright felt like they would have taken at 33. This is actually a name that I've thrown around a lot, when we've been talking about the draft. So I'm happy that I was somebody I was a little bit familiar with and somebody I would like to get as well going into the draft in the second round. And honestly, to get him at 44, it feels like a steal to me, Ethan, after going over his highlight tape. But I think really it's more of a test. It's less of a steal and more of a testament to the depth of this draft. But tell me your thoughts on Sidy Cissoko, and then I'll give you mine as a player.
Sure. I mean, obviously you're way higher on him, so you're going to have a lot more detail. But just kind of big picture thoughts on City. Obviously, a steal at 44. You're 100% correct. I felt like he was a lot better than probably a good majority of the other second round picks that were picked prior to him. Just personally, I feel like he's got a perfect build for the modern NBA to play the 4 or the 3. He kind of reminds me of a slightly shorter and obviously a lot less polished when he came into the NBA, but Scotty Barnes, kind of a really solid muscular build,
Interesting. I like
solid
that.
defender. He obviously had a problem with fouling out in the G League Ignite. I think he fouled out of most of his games, so that's obviously going to be something he has to work on. But I still like the aggressiveness. He's a bulldog, and he's already got a grown man's body at 19
Yeah.
years old. So this is his floor. I don't. He's only going to get better from here. And
Yeah.
shooting, I'm not worried about that at all. That's something the Spurs have been able to fix from day one. So
Uh-huh.
get him in the gym, get him with the coaching staff. He's going to be a 3-and-D guy a lot sooner than I think a lot of us are expecting him to be. And I still think he has more to his game than just that. But I think that'll be the first thing to kind of come through once he actually gets with the Spurs staff. And for me, long term, I think he's
Yeah.
a really solid backup four. Um, and he could be more. But for me at this point, that's where his ceiling is.
Yeah, yeah. Just to give a little bit of context for that, and he does have the size to do that. That's why
Mhm.
even in the welcome ceremony, you saw Sean talking, kind of comparing him to Boris a little bit,
A little
and
bit.
that was the first time it popped into my mind. I was like, man, with the size that like I'm seeing from him right now, because he looked
Mhm.
much bigger than expected as well. Just seeing him in person, and that comment, I was like, hmm. And then also there was somebody in the press conference talked about him playing 1 through 4. But the interesting thing is he hasn't played the 4 really in his career. He's played the 3 and the 2 mainly, but that's because of his playmaking, Ethan, which
Mhm.
once again ties into the Boris
Boris.
comparison.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. I mean, I can talk a little bit about his offensive highlights as well, because I think when people go turn on the tape just from his full season, if they watch, all of those highlights, the no ceilings finals where they do offense, playmaking, and defense, you're going to see a bunch of dunks. You're going to see a bunch of, pump fakes off the dribble, driving. I mean, a lot of highlight stuff, Ethan. While it
Mhm.
was only 12 points per game, like they were allowed 12 points, if you will, at least just from the tape that I've seen there. Um, but on top of that, like I said, also his playmaking. That was kind of why he played more of the 2, despite having the size that he does. And also, they had Leonard Miller on that team. They had Eric Mika, so they had guys that were more for that role, which is why it's exciting. That he has that size to potentially have that versatility. But really, kind of when I just think of him on the roster, Ethan, I think as of right now, he just slides into that backup 2 spot. Maybe he ends up playing the 4 if they move Champagny to the 2. But also that's the other thing with the CD Sissoko pick. I'm kind of getting a little bit off topic of when it comes to just his skill set, but I think he's somebody who could be around for a little bit, as you alluded to. I think he's got a really high upside. He's similar to Jeremy Sohan in the sense that he can do he has potential everywhere. And
Yeah.
he's a better shooter than Jeremy coming in. Now, that's not me saying that he's going to be as good as Jeremy. I'm just saying that he's got a lot of playmaking skills. He's a solid defender who can switch. I was watching his highlights before we got on. He can take people off the dribble, like I said, because he can play make. There's tons of behind, not behind the, well, he does have some behind the back passes, but there's so many where he's like driving to the rim, and it's just like Boris, where he like puts his arm around a defender and dumps it to a
Wrap
drive.
around.
Yes, wrap around. Perfect. That's what I was looking for, right? And dumps it to a defender like coming in, on a cut. But that's the other thing about CD is, dude, like they run a bunch of motion where
Mhm.
it's like somebody setting a screen for him on a cut. And there were so many of those plays. Oh, he likes Sidy. See, he knows. He's telling you, Ethan. He's seen these off-ball cuts from Sidy Cissoko, and
Mhm.
that's the thing that excites me about his game is that there's playmaking. He's able to catch and shoot, but he's also able to move. They ran a lot of motion on that offense with Scoot Henderson, and he was somebody who on those cuts that Scoot would dish it to a lot of the times. And he can finish in contact because of his frame. I
Mhm.
know it sounds like I'm talking about so much stuff is good. There's obviously still like some work that he has to do, but a kid who has played 3 straight professional seasons and is 19 coming into the league at 44 in the draft is something you got to feel good about. He's played, he knows how to play off top tier talent playing with Scoot Henderson. Similar to Sandro Mamukelashvili, he's got those 2 years in Spain, which gets you the European side of the game on top of playing with Wembanyama for the French national team as well. So there's chemistry of them just competing against each other growing up on top of the chemistry from them being on the same team. And I'm losing my train of thought again, Ethan.
Right, he's got chemistry with other guys. He came in with experience. He think he.
Yes. Getting back, that was the main thing, the pro aspect of it. So
Mhm.
I was talking about Mamu. He's got the European game with the French team and as well playing in Spain, and then on top of that, he's got the American game meshed together whenever it comes to the G League Ignite experience this past season, which is just once again, like I said with Mamu, that's kind of the Spurs game. It really is the mesh of the American game and the European game. And
Yeah.
that's something that CD even mentioned in his press conference. He was like, the Spurs are the team in the NBA that are the most like Europe, right? And so this is just, I mean, not only is there the French connection, but it's just like, it was just the perfect Spurs draft. And it was also the most, it was like the Spurs almost got back to their roots. Like you can just see the parallels with this. It was cool to see just like the perfect foreign connection for both players. But then the other thing I have to say about CD before I give it back to you, Ethan, is
Mhm.
at the press conference, like I said, my man played 2 years in Spain. At the press conference, he's speaking his English. It's not, obviously he's lived here for a year. You can tell he's still working on it a little bit, but still overall solid, right? Not the worst English I've ever heard. But dude, when he went to Spanish, that thing, it started coming out,
Yep.
man, and the crowd started going crazy. And I was like, CD's gonna be just fine in San Antonio.
Oh yeah.
He ain't gonna have no problems, man. He can speak fluent Spanish. He's just gonna be loved.
A
But
crowd favorite for sure.
Yep. And another thing that Wembanyama said about him also, because they had to ask about that because they've been teammates, is he said he's ultra competitive. And he told a story like that he remembered when they played each other when they were like 8 or 9. CD even talked about it in his press conference. So it's just they've known each other for a really long time. So that chemistry won't be hard, and that's not something the Spurs struggle with anyway.
No, not at all. And that explains why he fouls out so much if he is extremely competitive. Because when you're extremely competitive, what do? You overreact.
And also that could have been an adjustment to the U.S. rules
For
as
sure. It's
well.
just a different physicality. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to see what he's able to do in the summer league because obviously he will play. I'm pretty sure Wemby will play at least the first couple games.
Hmm.
And I don't know if these rumors are true, but I've heard that when Sohan, Wesley, and Malachi will also be playing
I've
to
been
kind of
seeing that
give
as
them some
well.
continuity. So that would really be your starting lineup: Blake,
Yeah.
Malachi, CD, Jeremy, and then Wemby at the 5, I guess.
Yep.
Uh, so that's a solid lineup. I'm looking forward to seeing that. July 7th is their first game, right?
It will definitely be, all eyes will be on the Spurs for the first time in a long time, Ethan.
Absolutely. Finally, we've been waiting
Right.
so long.
But just another thing about CD before we end off, just talking about where he fits onto this team, not necessarily positionally. I know we talked about how there's probably no point to do that anyway because he can play 1 through 4 basically. But dang it, I'm losing my train of thought again, Ethan. I was just about to ask you a question.
That's all right. You talking about his
Oh,
position?
duh. Well, just how he fits on the roster. Where do you? Thank you. You reminded me. Where do you think? What do you think his season is going to be like? Like, for example, basically, I think he'll probably end up in Austin for most of the season. Maybe he'll have some call up games. I'm interested to see what his contract is going to be. I haven't seen the news on that. Maybe we're just uninformed. If somebody knows, hit it up in the comments. But if he gets a full on contract, I think regardless, that's the point, because we've given out some two ways to Wieskamp and Quindary Weatherspoon in the past. I think obviously the Spurs are higher on CD, and I think you and I would be as well. So I think I would say I think he's going to get an actual contract on the team. But I think regardless of that, he'll be in Austin for most of the year this season.
He'll absolutely be in Austin for most of the season, barring any major injuries. I think he'll be kind of the third string 2, 3, and 4. And
Yeah.
he'll like come in if somebody gets hurt or somebody gets traded or something. He might get some
Mm-hmm.
spot minutes here or there, but I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Jude.
But you know what? That'll make it easier for us, Ethan, because he played in the G League last year. It'll be super easy to track his development
For sure.
this season, and where he's improved, because we'll actually have that tape. So shout out to Be Right, trading the picks away, getting 2 extras, and still getting the guy you wanted at 33.